You know, we actually have great conditions for drift fishing. It might sound a little windy, that's because it is windy. We're still sticking to this deeper water pattern that seems to be working here on Lady Evelyn Lake, using light line, fishing jigs on the bottom. From what I understand, the best bites are in the evening, and we're going to be fishing tonight after dinner. But Barb and I aren't giving up, so we're fishing in the middle of the day and fishing a lot of these. They're like reefs or bars that go down to about 30, 40 feet of water. And the fish that I just hooked, I was watching my sonar, was hooked in about 18 feet of water. Barb, would you mind getting the net?
Sure.
You can leave your rod in the water, because you might get a fish on. We might have a double header. So we're actually using the electric to control our drift, because otherwise we'd be drifting too fast using a 1/8 ounce jig head. Come on up here, honey.
Okay.
Okay. Wait till he comes close.
Okay.
I know you're ready to get him.
Yep. Oh, knocked him.
You got him in?
Not yet. There we go.
Oh,
he's a flying
almost
fish.
jumped out. Good one, Barb. Good net job.
Thank you.
Now, that fish just inhaled it, honey. Oh boy, Barb, I'm going to need the pliers that are down there.
Okay.
I think I'm going to be able to get him out without hurting him, because this guy's going to be released. Oh, I got him here. Right there. So we're going to put him in here, and then I'm going to extend him out in front of the boat, and then in a minute I'm going to show you how we're rigging our worms. So I'm just going to get him right in the water right here. A lot of people that come up from down south in the U.S. like to fish for smallmouth bass, and there's lots of smallmouth bass here. There he goes. But I would have to say the primary fish, Barb, up here is walleye.
Is that right?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely, because they taste so good, and if you get onto a school of them, you know, you can catch them all day long. Thank you, honey. Should I call you my worm girl?
Yeah,
okay.
I like worms.
Okay, so why don't we show them how we're keeping them here. We learned this trick last year up on Eagle Lake, and you can see that we've got ice cubes, and this is special ice. It's actually from Lady Evelyn Lake. So I understand that the water is so clear here. Now, the reason we've got these fish on ice is, number one, to keep them cold, but also as the ice is melting, we're into ice water. That ice water is going to keep the worms nice and lively, even though it's really hot out. It's about 25 degrees. Thanks, Barb. We better shut the lid so they stay nice and cool. Now, what we're going to do here, we're using very light jig heads. These are 1/8 ounce, and we're not using any plastic grubs, and we're taking half a worm. This is the tail end right here, and you can see it's nice and wiggly. And instead of spearing the worm a few times, we're actually going right up the middle of the broken part, and we're going up to about the hook barb, which is that little piece of weight that's sticking out on the bottom of the jig head. Roughly, it doesn't have to go right up. And then we're just letting the rest of the worm hang. So we don't really have a long dew worm, even though it probably would work, because these fish seem to be grabbing the bait very lightly. That last fish just inhaled it. I got a feeling the fish are turning on because we're getting a little bit windy conditions. And as you can see from this point that we're going into, we're directly fishing an onshore wind. So a lot of fishermen will duck out of the wind when it gets windy and a little bit uncomfortable to control the boat. But if you have an electric trolling motor, some of the best fishing, especially for walleye, is to fish the wind side of shoals, reefs, bars, points, and islands, because that's where the fish move on to feed. Okay, honey, we're still working for a few more shoreline fish. If you're going to be fishing for walleye where they're inactive and you're fishing for them in clear, deep water where you have to use a very delicate presentation in light jig heads like 1/8 ounce or even lighter, you're really better off going with a very light action rod and using thin, light line. Now, what I'm holding up in my hand here is an Avantis outfit. This particular one would be referred to as an ultralight outfit. So you can see how small the reel is. It fits in the palm of my hand. And this particular rod has a split grip handle. That's what this is called. So the less cork there is, or PVC material on the handle, the more sensitive it is, because it transfers all the different field from the bottom, whether it's rocks, sands, or weeds. And also you'll notice that this particular rod is a 2-piece rod, so even though it's an ultralight and it's under 5 feet long, it breaks down into 2 pieces. So this is an ideal outfit to use with a line diameter that's about 6-pound test monofilament or 4-pound test. So what I have on here is a titanium braid, and this particular one is 3-pound test monofilament diameter. So it's probably 8-pound test braid.
Fisher girl! Gotta have pink!
Now girls, if you look behind us here, we've got a situation where we've got some shallow water with some weeds. And if you were to fish on the bottom, your bait would probably get caught up on the weeds, or your lure would get stuck. So the best way to fish here is to use a float. Now when you use floats, there's different ways you can attach your float to your line. And what I've got here, this is a snap-on float. So watch how I've attached it here. It's kind of neat. I have 2 pieces of surgical tubing, one there and one on the bottom. I actually have 2 on the bottom to make it nice and tight. So this is surgical tubing that if I don't want to fish with the float, I can take the float off. But if I want to use the float, I just stick the bottom end into the surgical tubing and I stick the top end into the surgical tubing. So that surgical tubing is strong enough to keep it in one spot, but if I want to move it, if I hold the line tight, I can actually pull it up and down the line. So the reason I'm using a float that snaps on and stays in the spot where I put it is because I'm not going to be fishing very deep. So where we're fishing here, the deepest I would probably fish is about 4 feet. So there's my hook in my left hand and my float about 4 feet away or shallower.